Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening to this new webcast, podcast, whatever you want to call it these days. This is hashtag LaidOffLife, and I am Jennifer Crowfoot, one of the hosts of this hashtag LaidOffLife. So, and I'm here with my co-host.
Yes. I'm Jigna. How's everyone doing? We are a little too happy this morning. I think we're just super excited about our very first episode.
Yes.
Sourpuss. We wanted to talk a little bit about the current state of the world. We'd be remiss if we didn't do that. So there have been a lot of things that are taking place out there in the world, specifically around some of the protests that are going on, and of course the ongoing pandemic and quarantine. Hence why we're not together right now, Jennifer and I. But we make do. So Jennifer, I just want to talk a little bit about that and see what you thought about the current state.
It definitely is a sad time in our nation, and I think that my heart goes out to anybody who's been impacted by a racial discrimination or violence. And I for me, I don't understand, and it saddens me. And it's just gosh. The world is tough enough as it is, and I try to teach my kids and everybody around me just to be nice and be helpful, and it doesn't seem to be enough anymore. And as we have to stand up now really and just tell people it's not okay. And I stand there with everybody to say it's not okay, and we're not going to tolerate people to discriminate anymore. So, Jigna.
Yeah, I just it is tough. My family has gone through some of that, been on the receiving end of it as well, and it's important for me to make sure my son, really understands how this impacts our lives as well as other people's lives. Our lives less so than many others, and it's important that we, try to be global citizens, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. Whether it's talking through this podcast about, having a Laidoff life, or through our volunteer work that we do, or anything else. So, with that said, I wanted to kind of continue a little bit about our journey, Jennifer and I, and we also have some great topics or ideas that we wanted to talk about around not being a sourpuss. So how we met, Jennifer, I will say we met about a year ago at work.
It was a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, or a year and 4 months ago, something like that. And so about a year and a couple months ago, I actually hired Jigna.
She's my boss lady.
And now we're business partners. So
yeah, but it's okay. I don't think that's one lesson learned for sure, is that Jennifer never really made me feel like I was working for her. We were kind of working together. So it was a very easy transition for me. And I did learn a lot about management. Both Jennifer and I have experience with managing team members as well as working within teams. So bonded over our passion for Seinfeld, I think.
Definitely, because not most people can sit around and quote Seinfeld like I can. So I appreciate that. Most people look at me like, huh?
Mutual appreciation for it. And you will hear us quite a bit talking about Seinfeld. So we apologize in advance, but we love it, and we hope you will too. So let's talk a little bit about, our, why we're doing this, what our mission is for this podcast.
Yeah, so I think that the mission, Jigna, it's kind of started out like this. She sent some pictures of herself sitting outside and had a glass of chai, and it's like hashtag LaidOffLife. I was like, sent her back another picture of me like hanging outside too with my little swing or something like that, or maybe my inflatable pool. I don't remember which one, but it was like this idea like, oh my gosh, we could do something with this, because we were both giving each other some support and trying to be positive about what can we do going forward. And I think that the idea is like how do we support each other? And there's a lot of people out there, right, that don't have a job currently right now. So, and then have some fun with it. So,
yeah, being laid off is never fun, and we don't want to make make it sound like we're having an amazing time and taking advantage of what's happening. However, we do want to make the best of it. We are approaching it as an adventure, whether it's an adventure of understanding ourselves or understanding how the new world works when it comes to applying for jobs or just reaching out to and networking. So that's going to be our approach. We don't want to be sourpusses, and when life gives you lemons, you make a podcast. So that's we planned that.
All our secrets.
We do. Well, of course, there's just a lemon lying around, waiting for us. So anyway, we do want to make sure that we emphasize it's important to take this seriously. However, just not let this bog you down, your mind and your
Absolutely, because you could go two ways with this. You could, we could have chosen to sit at home and go, woe is me, and, try to put on I could have tried to gain another 15 pounds after the quarantine. There's 15, it could be the Laidoff 15, but, that's not, I think both of us chose that we're not going to do that. We're going to, besides trying to look and see what jobs are out there, is how can we make an impact in the world and help other people too at this time.
Yeah.
And besides, it's more fun to smile when you're doing it and make it fun, because then I think fun attracts more people around you and positive energy too.
Absolutely. So, when you are laid off or even fired, it's difficult to keep, from thinking or feeling those negative thoughts about yourself, your now employer, like your former employer, and the world, especially with everything that's happening in the world. So there are some responsibilities that you and your employer have during this what I've coined the layoff break-off period. So let's talk a little bit about sort of our responsibilities as employees and what should be taking place and what we should be doing. So the first thing is a graceful exit.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, what do you think about that?
Well, I one time watched a guy at a previous job many years ago basically pack up all his stuff and yell some very obscene words. And then I was asked, because I was also working and I was doing learning and development at the time and what do you call that? Employee relations, yes. So I was asked to write up what I heard and saw. And I was like, you really want me to type some of those words? And then I was like, are those hyphenated? Because I'm not really sure. But anyway, I couldn't believe I was writing this on paper. I think that left an impression on people, and it's certainly not something you want to do and leave that kind of impression. And right now, why most layoffs are happening through kind of the up in the air style, where you're getting it done over a Zoom call or Teams or something probably a Zoom call. It feels weird, right? And I think for everyone, so it's I think realizing that it's hard not to think it's personal, but realizing that given the time and the circumstances, that everybody has to make some really difficult choices for organizations to continue on. And so being able to just kind of nod and say thank you, and if you need to go scream, go do it in a pillow in your room afterwards or something like that. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it reminds me of you remember Jerry Maguire, right? When he has this just the most epic exit, just takes his stuff and makes a big speech.
Yep.
Who's coming with me? And that it feels so good, right? Very satisfying. However, do you really think he would get a reference from that company or any of his colleagues want to be helpful to him when he actually needs it? Because we saw firsthand that no one wanted to help him the minute he left that door. So, of course, there is Renee Zellweger, who, of course, follows the moon, but it's just a movie.
It's not necessarily real life, but I think that it is real life to be able to then it's when you reach out to the folks after it happens, right? And I think too, when you reach out to the people that you work with, to let them know and still be positive, because on the flip side, those people are going to have surviving guilt. So there's kind of two things that happen in anytime people get laid off. There's the people that have the anger and the upset about being let go, and then the people who are still there that have this like, well, why did they keep me? What does that mean? Or what responsibilities are going to put on me now? There's a lot of fear and angst in the person who gets left
Or
in the
am I
organization.
next?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, that too. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on. So I think it's how, I think as you told me when we were talking earlier about how eloquent like to be like helpful to your former peers and colleagues, like if they have questions about where to find things, or if you had responsibilities that are now to them, let them know, hey, if you have a question, you can reach out to me. I'm not gonna like bark at you and or say no, I'm not gonna help you.
Absolutely. We call that the karma quotient. So that's something important, and we can definitely talk a little bit about that on our next our future
Yeah.
podcast. But for that, it's you have the time right now to fill your karma quotient. Do good deeds for your uh, former colleagues who may in the future become a manager, who may hire you, or who may go to onto another position, and you may be a good fit for their position. So
Or they know people that may say, I have an opening of this. Do you know anybody? Yeah, you certainly want them to come first thing in their mind, to come back to you and throw your name out there for them.
absolutely, and just being a global citizen actually helps you in feeling good about yourself, especially when you're in the pits, right? So when you are sort of in that position, let's say you're being called by HR, your manager, and you're sitting at that chair, it must feel awful to receive this awful news, because it's not impacting just your work life, it's your personal life, whether you'll be able to put food on the table, you'll be able to
Mm-hmm.
take your kids on the next vacation. I mean, there are very different priorities, but those things do impact all of us. So it's the your employers definitely know that they understand what you're going through, because they're human beings as well. So you do have some responsibilities. We all have some responsibilities when we are receiving the bad news, I always say that you should be like Switzerland, channel Switzerland, be neutral where you possibly can. With that country, itself has gotten itself out of a lot of pickles, and in this case, it makes sense to be sort of that neutral person. And I had always had some challenges trying to figure out, what do I say in this situation, and how do you stay neutral. So we have some examples that we sort of put together. One of the examples, or one of the things that you can say is, and I wrote this down just so I don't forget it. I understand this must have been a difficult situation for you, meaning the employer. I foresee a tough time for myself in the future, and you're being very honest with them.
Mm-hmm.
I may not understand why this happened, but I'm hopeful I will in the near future. And this sort of encompasses a sentence, or a couple of sentences, really encompasses what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Being true to yourself, you're saying that this is not going to be easy for me. They need to understand it's not going to be easy for you, and that you don't necessarily accept what's being sort of doled out to you. However, you're doing it in the right way, in a most graceful manner.
I think it's a really good point too. Like, because you want, it's okay to feel sad or angry. You want to express your feelings, and as I try to teach my kids, and in a course, a program that I've been certified to teach called Fierce Conversations, and talk about that too. Like, how do we um state what we're feeling without like lashing out at people, and or becoming an emotional, really overly emotional. But it's important to say those things that you need to say to someone. And I think that's where, just as you pointed out, just to be able to say that back to the employer. And I think, too, to tell them, even if you appreciate the experiences you have had there, I think that's important to say to them too. So, and wish them luck as well, because, it's a kind of a scary time for businesses. They don't know how much longer they'll be around. And so, we certainly hate to see any organization go under.
Absolutely. And it does impact, if an organization goes under, impacts a lot more people than just me,
Yes.
or one individual. So they most employers you do look at the situation, and really try to make sure that they're making the right decision, because if they are letting go of a lot of folks, at the same time, it will impact their business and overwork the existing team members that are still there. So that's never a good option as well. So just be mindful, and if you just feel like you're overwhelmed, you have the right. You can absolutely tell the HR individual or your manager and say, hey, I need to take a minute. I go for a walk, go out for a drive if you need to. And then, hey, you're getting laid off anyway. What's it matter if you're leaving for a minute and coming back, right? You can say, hey, I just need a minute.
Or you can even put if you're doing it over Zoom, you can take your video off so that you can just turn your head around and or mute yourself and scream and yell and then come back and go, oh, okay.
Yeah. I've, in the past, like I will call my mentor or confidant, my significant other, whatever makes sense, whoever's going to give you good advice and or sort of bring you down from that high level that you're at. So take a little bit of time if you need, because it's important just compose yourself. You never want the sort of that, as good as it might feel, you don't want that Jerry Maguire moment. So try not to do that if at all possible. And why is that, Jennifer? Why is it important for us to not really maybe go towards that immediate satisfaction?
Yeah. Well, because it won't be satisfying. About 30 minutes later, you'll realize what you did. And it's something you put out there and you can't take it back. And I think it even goes to kind of that karma quotient that Jigna's talking about there. In fierce conversations, we talk about it's an emotional bank as well. Like, so you want to fill that up with good things for yourself and for others. And as you mentioned, it's not easy for the employer sitting on that side. I notice I've had to let go of people before. It's a horrible feeling because it's got an impact. So overall, there's no reason to make everybody feel worse in the situation. And I think too, like you said, going to those people that you're confidants and really having that conversation with them about what's going on, and then look forward, right? So I think that's the next step, really, and it's to just it's happened. There's not going to be anything you can really do about it. So it's just to start looking forward and talking with your confidants, other work colleagues that you trust in the situation to kind of talk to them about it, or whoever that might be, mentors and such. That's where you need to go and start figuring out what your next plan is, as opposed to sitting at home and having your Jerry Maguire moments.
Yes, or just go and make a podcast like Jennifer and I did.
There you go.
It's therapy, right? It's a podcast therapy for us. So, whatever works, you'll find your way. I do want to take a little bit of time of this podcast and talk a little bit about the employer's responsibility. A lot of times we talk about the employees' responsibilities. So if there are any employers, managers, people who are in that position, we're sort of kind of playing with you guys around, some of the things that, we're asking you to keep in mind when you are going through some tough times, and a lot of things you might be able to implement, and or just a reminder even for you to keep in mind. So Jennifer, do you want to talk a little bit about, you were my manager, so I'm going to ask you what you think your responsibility should have been.
Well, I mean,
by the way, Jennifer did not fire me or lay me off. It was, she and I actually both got the axe on the same day.
On the same day, yeah. Shortly, like 20 minutes between each other, I think. So, but the thing is this, and it's, if you were in person, which I doubt many of these are happening that way, you would obviously schedule it in a private room. So the nice thing, at least you're putting it privately in a Zoom call or wherever that might be for you. But I think the interesting thing is that in a time like this too, when someone sees you schedule a meeting one-on-one with people you don't normally talk with, they kind of know it's coming. So I think that's something to be aware. Like, they're going to have this angst or this feeling, and always when you're going to have that kind of a conversation with somebody, you've had time to practice it as the employer, and process some of those emotions already. Even though it doesn't feel good, you still have had that time. So you've either had 24 hours or a few days, whatever your plan has been to make some of those decisions. When that employee comes in and has that conversation, even though they might figured it out about 20 or 30 minutes before when they got this invite, they start to have their emotional charge is going to be very different. And I think it's just being aware of that, because, hopefully they don't go into some kind of moment of yelling and screaming. But I think that the state of knowing they may be really quiet, they may tear up, things like that, and just and be respectful of them. And I think some of the best things you can say is, letting them know that this, again, same that if you have your statement back to them, as Jigna pointed out earlier, that's a good statement to have in case you need that for later. But it is to say, thank you. And if you have questions too, like about well, don't be afraid to ask, is there someone I can talk to? And a lot of times they will already have the HR person will be on the call with whoever the manager was or the exec team that let you go. And they will let you know. They can schedule one-on-one time with you, or you can reach out when you're ready to have those questions about well, when's my last paycheck? Or what about healthcare benefits? What about, my stuff in my office? Because right now, if you're been still in quarantine, and I know in some states, they're starting to go back into the offices part-time, depending on who you are and such. But if you have things, how do you get those things back to you? If you have equipment checked out, all those kind of weird things that are going on. So, feel free to say, and if you can't ask it right then because you're emotionally charged, and the employer knows that too. But I think make sure the employer, you offer that hey, someone, and don't wait for the employee even to have to ask. I think it's even better if you just come around and say, HR person here is available. He or she's going to send you an email or whatever it might be. And then you can schedule time to talk with them. And as employers, make sure you get ways to communicate with the employee afterwards, because you probably shut off any of their access to work emails or phone numbers, that you have all their information for that. I think it's too, if you have assistance to offer them, some companies will have programs that have career services, or even to letting them know that they can still use you as a reference. I think that's an important thing to say too, and just being really mindful of what can you offer them in this hard time. And I think that's the best you can do at the moment.
You said something that's really important, right, Jennifer, is that you have a gut feeling this is happening. Generally, if HR is scheduling a call with you out of the blue, it's happening.
Yeah.
So if that time that they're scheduling the call with you is not something that makes sense for you because you need a little bit of time, just say, give me a little bit longer. This time doesn't make sense for me. And see what happens, and you do have the right as an employee to ask, hey, who else is going to be on this call? What is this about? They can, they may not be as straightforward, but there will be some keywords you can look out for, so you can be prepared as an employer. Back to what Jennifer was saying around just responsibility and the empathy part is really important for the employer, as well as hand holding. Just pretend like your employee is 7 years old and they need a lot of hand holding. Just
a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really important, and it's good karma. You need to fill your karma quotient as well. You're getting rid of a lot of people, right? So that's a lot of bad karma coming your way, unintended, but fill your karma quotient in this way.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, employers really, in this time of a pandemic, unrest, a lot of times what's happening is that we're seeing employers utilize this opportunity to maybe weed out some of the folks that they may not want to have anymore, or restructure their teams, and some of it might be important to do. So we just ask that employers not do any frivolous firing, where is it really absolutely necessary? Are you being strategic around your future needs, or are you being reactive to your current needs because you may be less, you may not make as much money this year because of not enough money coming in. However, you do know that operationally you're going to still need these individuals. So it's very important to not get a little trigger happy and do frivolous firing. Did you see that? See how I incorporated that?
I think frivolous firing then turns into, for some employees, it's turned into furlough, right?
Furlough.
So it could be frivolous firing, furlough. I don't know.
Frivolous furloughing. Yeah, that's the other one.
Right.
Yeah, but it's, you know what, furlough is a little bit better than just laying off, because at least the associate knows that they do have a future. Being laid off doesn't necessarily mean that you're coming back. Generally, you're not coming back, and it is the employer's responsibility to see if there is a way to maybe reduce the hours of the associate and still keep them on the payroll.
You made me think of something. So back in the when we had the recession in, was it like 08, 09,
yeah.
something like that. So the company I was working for at that time, they did something really interesting too. So I mean, they went through a process to put people on a reduced work schedule, and they're and paying them for a reduced amount of time, but then still covering their benefits.
Yeah.
And then they did let some of them know as time was going on, like when we knew we weren't going to have projects to put people back on, they had their laptops and things that were like, you should take advantage of some of these career services or training that they had available. We had a lot of online education training and certificates that they could work towards. So to get those things where they had the time, they knew they were at home, they were working on a client. So they were like, we expect that, if the client business picks up, we'll push you this way. But if not, you might want to just be ready. And then that kind of gave them some time while they're doing that to also look at strategically what they really needed and the skill sets in the organization. Because I did sit on a project where we went through tons of skill sets and understanding where people were at. And as I sat in like one night late, like on the spreadsheet while they were having this conversation, helping them kind of identify where everybody fell in these skill sets. But I think it was a really thoughtful process to do it, and it wasn't such a knee-jerk reaction, as you're saying, and as such. I mean, I know for some people they feel like this is kind of unprecedented or uncharted territories, but I think anytime something happens in the world and it impacts businesses, I think it's always kind of uncharted territories. I don't think anything has ever been exactly the same, and so I think there's some. We can talk about some of those again too. I'm a real nerd. I should also mention I love to read, like, also besides my dystopic and witchy novels, I also read a lot of journals.
Harvard. What is it, Harvard? Oh my goodness.
I love Harvard Business Review. I read like everything.
I have heard, so every single time Jennifer comes in the morning, she's talking about, hey, did you read that article on HPV or this one? So yes, she's absolutely a knowledge nut.
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of, and some of it I look at and some I agree with, some I might not, some I look at, trying to look at experiences. And I think that's how you have to look at everything. But I think the more this kind of helps you think about how to place things out. And so I think that there's some ways to be thoughtful and know it's tough because sometimes you have to make decisions you feel like quicker. And I get it right now too. I think some employers are making decisions quickly to kind of help with extra benefits that are out there during this time for unemployment. And so I get it. It's kind of this complicated, like, oh, but if I do it now, they can get this extra money. If I wait, they may not. And so some things, so it's kind of a weird.
You just have to kind of assess. A lot of times just making a table helps, the pros and cons of
I also love Excel. Yeah. So that would be good.
There you go. So Jennifer, you actually reminded me about your experience in 08. I had something a little different in 08 where the company I was working for is a Fortune 500 company, and they had their approach was that they were going to reach out to, very honest, and they said, hey, listen, we're offering all of their associates that were wanting to, maybe they were thinking about retiring or looking at maybe a shift in their careers. They offered a severance opportunity for them to voluntarily leave the organization, and that could be something the employer maybe looks at is, hey, is there anybody in the organization that can potentially lessen sort of your pool, but also they're the ones who bow out and help the rest of the team members that are still at the company. So it could be something, it's okay to be honest. There's nothing wrong with just saying, hey, we're struggling as a company or an association or whatever, services you provide. It's honesty is going to really help you at the end of it all. So one specific thing I do want to really cover is when you are in that position as an employer that you're going to be letting go of a team member. It's I learned this through one of my previous employers, and I believe Jennifer, you've also experienced something similar to this. Is that when you're in that meeting, try to limit the amount of people that are there. You don't want to have 5 of you guys and then the one associate. This process is already intimidating. Remember, we were talking about treating a 7-year-old. You wouldn't put like 5 adults in front of a 7-year-old. So maybe not do that in this situation. So have maybe a maximum of 2 people. The HR individual and then the immediate manager is generally the case, or maybe the director, whomever it might be. Just a maximum of 2 people at one time is really what we recommend.
Yeah, mass layoffs are like, I was gonna say, I can remember too, back in the early 2000s after the Y2K kind of business kind of finished up, there being this like where there were like phone calls to people and they like were told to bring all their stuff into this room, and people were let go like in a mass herd all at one time, which
that's not
yeah, I don't think, hopefully nobody does that anymore. Hopefully that's so 20 years ago-ish. But yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, the HR individuals will definitely tell you is that it's a benefit for you to take the time and set aside some time to talk to each individual in a private manner.
Especially because when you let people go one way or another, regardless if you're a company that sells something, your brand is still out there, and employees will discuss that about how you handled things and former employees. And so the last thing you want to have happen is for them to be able to say anything negative about how you handle the situation, because then that jeopardizes your brand. So yeah, you never know when a former employee is going to be a customer or client, or such.
Or your own boss. Yeah. Yeah. There are situations where they may be hiring you when you get laid off. So,
yeah.
There's that. So it's just, it's just a good rule of thumb, and we've all heard it, and it's so hard to follow, especially in this sort of time where it's such a struggle. And just keep reminding yourself is, don't be a sourpuss. It's an adventure, and life isn't going to be as bad. This is one small part of your life, and you have a lot more to be focused on. I don't want to do the whole have a lot to be thankful for, and just some of the cliche things, but focus on something that you love doing instead, whether it's your hobby, whether it's your kids or your family, your boyfriend, significant other, girlfriend. It's just you just shift your focus is what
you have an opportunity. Yeah, but I think that you said something there, like, what is it, the things you really enjoy to kind of pivot towards. We'll talk about some of those in future podcasts. I know about, there may be an opportunity to reinvent yourself and pivot and figure out what you want to be when you grow up, or maybe you still don't know what you want to be when you grow up. But I think those are really important things that, looking at as an adventure, or as a former colleague of ours would say, it's a plot twist. Almost like it's, if you think about the choose your own adventure books. So we had a plot twist in the page. So now we're trying to figure out, what page do I select next?
Banderdash.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I'm not. But I saw the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt one that did that. So that's a recent one. Yeah.
We can check that one out.
So
yeah, Jennifer told me a little bit about this this show where she's sort of in a bunker for a long time, and then she comes out in New York City and has to figure out her life in this new world. So maybe that's what we all do is channel our Kimmy Schmidts and figure it out in this new world.
If I start talking to a backpack, you might want to talk to my husband and say you may need to take her to the doctor.
Get some help. Yeah, okay. I'll remember that. One thing we want to do every episode is look at our fortunes. So we have our fortune cookies. So we're going to go ahead and make a lot of noise and look at our fortunes, whether it's for the day, for the week, for the month, the year, life.
Ooh, this one is a good one.
Go ahead.
Courtesy begins in the home. Let's see if we can.
Courtesy begins in the home. What does that mean?
Well,
What do you
I
think
think
it
it means if I'm laid off and stuck at the house, I need to be courteous to the people I live with and not drive them crazy. So,
Good motto. Good motto. Ooh, oh. An unexpected relationship will become permanent. Maybe they're talking about you and me.
oh, there you go. Nice. All right.
Yeah. If you guys really enjoyed the show, and we have a lot of fun topics that we're going to be talking about. The next episode is based on our favorite TV character, or one of our favorite TV characters, titled "We Can't All Be Kramers," and we're going to keep that a mystery and see what we're all talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't be all be Kramer, so yeah, tune back into the next episode on that. And as always, too, if you have topics you want to hear or comments for us, we'd love to hear that from you. I think as Jigna mentioned too, if you want to be a global citizen on our podcast, or we're always looking for people to interview as well.
Absolutely. So you can check us out on social media, on Facebook as well as Instagram. Just look for LaidOffLife. And soon we'll have our website up, LaidOffLife.co. So you can find all the information there. And we hope to see you back again next time.
All right. Thanks, Jigna. Appreciate it.